Everybody, I'm Zach and I like movies, and I'm here to talk about the newest movie from Alex Garland, Civil War. This is the fourth and presumably the final directorial outing from acclaimed writer Alex Garland, who's had a really great career as a screenwriter from 28 Days Later to Sunshine, and even as his own director and directing his own scripts with Ex Machina and Annihilation. Really great sturdy science fiction filmmaking. But man, after Men, dude, I don't think I've seen quite a dramatic shift of general consensus for a filmmaker like with Alex Garland after Men. You know, after he made Men, he kind of entered that whole that peanut gallery snootiness of well, I actually didn't like him anyway, which is really helpful to discussing artistic intentions and the movies in general, which it's very tiring. But then he was coming out with this movie, this Civil War movie, which is really seemed to be a loaded concept in in the premise of it. I mean, there's plenty of conversation to be had about. There's a good cogent case to be made whether or not a movie being made and released in 2024 in America that is clearly capitalizing on the social unrest going on in the country, and whether or not even making a movie about that or featuring that is at least a little bit irresponsible. But those cases I do understand and agree with some. And then there's there was a lot of hand wringing about the movie's supposed apolitical stance, which having seen the movie now, it clearly has politics in it, and I don't know how anyone can watch this movie and not see that there are there's clearly a side that are the bad guys. They have Nick Offerman playing President Ron Swanson Trump, who disbanded the FBI, is on his third term, did airstrikes on Americans, and committed and okayed Antifa massacres. There's clearly politics here, and I feel, and even with the insistence, both in terms of some of the more high profile marketing with the marketing making it look like the movie was some big political and cultural event, or that it would be and even some of the things Alex Garland has said in interviews leading up to the release about how polarization, it's not about left and right, we got right, just this sort of enlightened centrism idea, which I really, really hate, and is helps nobody, adds to nothing, just is sort of is more than anything just really self-aggrandizing, trying to be above everything and not really wanting a stance on anything. But I think the movie that Garland made is aware of that. It is aware that no matter how you insist that you aren't involved politically, that you really just want to that you are involved at some level in some way, even if you can't help it. There's a scene where the protagonists, they go to a town that seemingly is untouched from the civil war going on. Sorry, throat's dry. And they're oh well, we try to stay out of it. We see what's on the news, probably for the best. But then you look up at the tops of the building and you got snipers posted up there. So yeah, they're involved. Doesn't matter if they say they're not. And really, I feel both in part of the marketing certainly kind of played a role, and really even just calling it Civil War and it being set in a supposedly fictionalized second American Civil War, kind of almost inevitably will turn into like a Rorschach test of sorts about a movie that just kind of essentially judging the book by its cover of just like, well, it's what people are seeing what they want to see out of it, or like it's not the movie they wanted to see out of it, or yeah. And the discourse I feel like is kind of reading the movie for like what they wanted it to be, or what they wanted it to say, or if they wanted to say something specific about politics, or its the politics of its fictional world. And I feel like a lot of the discourse isn't like looking at the movie for what it is about, and what it is about is the aestheticization and aesthetics of war and war films. At least that's what I get out of it. So Civil War is about a group of photojournalists. They're just a small group. They're played by Kirsten Dunst, Wagner Moura, Cailee Spaeny, and the always great, always lovable Stephen McKinley Henderson, our boy. And they're on their way trying to make it to Washington, D.C. to potentially interview President Nick Offerman, and also they really want to get the money shot of Nick Offerman getting shot. Like they're basically teasing out like, oh yeah, President Ron Swanson Trump is gonna get Gaddafi'd, and we really want to get that photo. And so this movie is like, yeah, it's a little annoying that it's like makes a stance about like, oh, it's not involved in the politics. We don't want to like no comment, and yeah, that's kind of annoying and even a clickbait move. But really, the photojournalist characters, that's like the mindset they at least Kirsten Dunst tries to self-justify herself for her occupation, because all of them are like, they're really self-interested people. Kirsten Dunst, she feels a very high in sort of like more noble intentions, but she's done this so long that she's really jaded about what she does. She used to believe that like sending these images back would be like a warning, like that showing these captured photos would would lead to good and noble intentions, whereas Wagner's character, he's much more of a thrill seeker. He like just gets like this like weird sick thrill out of these combat situations that they're put into, and each and every one of these combat scenes, they are really tense, they are expertly filmed, and they're like even thrilling to a lot of degree. And I shouldn't need to be said, and probably should have been upfront about this. This movie is really well made. This is Alex Garland, I think, has like really proven himself as a very competent director in terms of like presentation and spectacle. Oh, and is even like working with a budget, and like this isn't like a huge multi-million-dollar movie. This is like A24's biggest, most expensive release, but the movie only cost like $50 million, which, I mean, look at something like The Flash. This movie absolutely looks spectacular. Visually, it's beautifully, there's a lot of like really beautiful, often beautiful shots. Like the embers on fire just look and feel like really crispy and incredible. But the sound of this movie is magnificent. Like, especially if you get this in IMAX. The sound is booming. Like when there's an explosion, either close by or off in the distance, like it like just has this shuddering rumble to them. Every gunshot feels like 10 gunshots. It's probably some of the best sounding gunfire, maybe since some of Michael Mann's best movies, like Heat or Collateral. And and even like the entire like third act, where they're in this big war zone in Washington, in the middle of DC, is all incredibly well staged. I think it's some of the best combat sequences that I've seen in a movie in quite a while. I think in terms of like these like militarized gunfires, and yeah, it definitely delivers in terms of the spectacle and such. And what I do think this movie does struggle with are the characters, because I feel like the performances are really like lifting up what is sort of lacking in this, what's kind of lacking in the page. They're all it's not the fact that they're not just that they're unlikable. Well, that's the problem. I just don't find them like personally that interesting, in the characterization of as characters. But honestly, a lot of the times Garland tends to like just view characters as like oftentimes symbolic proxies, or even just like it's not about who the characters are, it's like what the characters are about and what they represent that like helps feed into the themes of the story he's telling. And that's fine, but also it kind of makes some of the emotional connection a little struggle, kind of struggle, at least for me. But what this movie like really getting into was how these photojournalists like were so dead set and obsessed and gleeful about trying to capture the perfect image. Like this is a movie that really like has its Civil War as just set dressing to explore this idea about the horror, our horror too, but also our draw to not only see these images of war, but also the filmmaker's idea, the filmmaker's own draw of wanting to craft these images. Because with photography and filmmaking, you have to there's a lot of clear choices made either in the moment or even afterwards, where it's about how the image looks, and this movie actually has a really clever editing choice where whenever you have some of the characters in the fray, they're documenting what's happening, and it will briefly cut to the snapshot of the photo they took. Someone's on the ground bleeding from a gunshot or something like that, and it puts you into perspective. And maybe you could have had more sit down conversations about how they about the hows and the nitty gritties of the profession itself, how they go about choosing what to photograph, and how they do it, because there's a lot of choices to be made. The composition of the framing and even the color, even shooting on film and in black and white, one of the characters do, or even just being there, or even with the act of being there and just being an observer is just good and not. Because Kirsten Dunst, she tries to justify it by being you don't ask questions, you're just there to watch and observe and report back. But there is more. It's less that the characters ask each other other questions about what do these these images have power to them, but what do people take out of these images? What will these images be used for in the after effects? But that's something that they almost can't really know, because this movie is about being in the moment and just capturing the image, not yet concerned about who will take what out of the image they take. And I think that's really interesting. And I don't know if I'm almost not sure if Garland is trying to play up the like sort of like supposed apoliticism to like get a rise out of us, or if he like really does if he really does believe that like that there is these I don't know, like you can't like, yeah, there's no like you can't there's no sides in war, there's no real sides in war, but like no, man, wars happen for a reason, civil wars or not, there's political reasons. And I do think there is like a real missed opportunity into like maybe not like interrogating some more like ambivalent. The setting of this war is like left purposefully ambivalent, which is kind of frustrating because it feels like a missed opportunity to like get into the weeds of like how things got to the way they were, and like how we could, and how even the images they take and the snapshots and like what that they use, whether or not they can be like used as like a footnote or touchstone into like where we could go from here or whatnot. But I'm trying not to like think of the movie as what I wanted it to be, or what even the trailers promised it to be, because I see this movie, when I started seeing this movie more as how how its characters just wanted to create the image, and not more about like what the image about what they and the world itself, they exist in, do with the image. Because it's Garland isn't like setting up like characters to like have debates about this. They're just too obsessed and single and like tunnel visioned about getting to that image. And when we show the image that the movie really lingers on at the end, it really is like asking us how we feel about that. And if all of that ambivalent, and if that like horror, and also I feel like maybe Garland is also interrogating that about himself too, because one of the influences I think that I think I heard him talk about was this movie called Come and See, which is very rightly regarded as like the most horrifying movie of any genre, definitely the most horrifying war movie ever made, because that movie like so perfectly captures the like psychological damage that war brings. There's really few other movies like it in that regard. And and it feels both that these images of war in these war movies, and even the ones that he seems to be evoking in some of these set pieces, like there's a scene with a sniper the snipers going on. There's the entire that feels like he's a callback to American Sniper. The entire third act feels reminiscent of Zero Dark 30 in a lot of ways, and it feels like, and the way that it's all shot and filmed and stuff, it is thrilling and really and gripping, and like there's an excitement to it, but like what's happening is horrifying, just like not just being there, but like seeing this happen. And it's so, and I feel like Garland is sort of aware of that weird conflicting tension, but I don't know if he's like saying anything about it, more that he's just like aware of that feeling, that there is a desire to like seek out these images and even make these images from a film, like as a filmmaker. But it's whether or not it like is at all engaged with saying something about whether or not it's engaged with saying anything about the like feelings that gives you. I'm not sure, but I think that tension in terms that creative and like that creative revulsion and also intention, that weird like media perversion, I think is what makes Civil War an interesting movie. And I think that's I do recommend it. I do recommend you really should just go out and see this movie for yourself. Try not to like. It's really like asking you not to think too hard about like its like own internal lore, but maybe don't put too much of your own. Maybe it's asking itself not to put too much of your own political biases into it, but like again, it also knows that that's kind of impossible. But yeah, I do think that is what makes it an interesting movie, and I do recommend it for it. It's all spectacularly well made. The acting was really great. Of course, Jesse Plemons is a scene stealer in it. I kind of wish they didn't spoil him in the trailer, but how could you not? It is a real standout scene. He's man, he's so great in that scene, and in everything. Like the way he like just stands and like cradles his gun, and like the way he like scratches his chin, it doesn't feel like acting. He's just sort of inhabiting this character, which, man, really filling in that Philip Seymour Hoffman shaped hole in the world. Well, and we thank him for it. But yeah, even with Plemons' character, its movie isn't without politics. It's pretty clear who the bad people are. Like, I don't want to get too far into that, but a lot of this movie is just kind of like letting you decide things for yourself and letting you showing you images and letting you dissect how you feel about it. And even still, I'm still kind of trying to like better narrow down my feelings of it. And I think that's probably why I'm gonna want to watch this again. And it's gripping. It's sometimes it's thrilling, but it's also messy. But I think it's interesting too. And yeah, I do recommend it. And I really wish that a lot of the film community would just like give Alex Garland the artistic benefit of the doubt again, because he's really shown he has a lot of juice to him. And I'm kind of sad that this is that if this is his last movie as a director, I think it's there are worse notes to go out on, I think. So yeah, I recommend this. I would probably give this a decent 2 strong 6 out of 10. And yeah, that's my review. So comment, like, subscribe. What did you think of Civil War? And what do you think of Alex Garland? Do you think he fell off after Men? Do you think there's like more to him? Do you think he's like? Do you also are you with me in that? Yeah, maybe he needs a little bit more credit given where it's due. And yeah, that's it. I like them. I like this movie, and I like a lot of movies. I will see a lot more movies, and I hope you do too. And I will see you later.